Hello. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a slightly different session, I think. A lot of normally edtech stuff and ideas like that. So I thought we'd do a little bit of a pastorally type thing. Probably not going to take an hour of your life up tonight. And quite happy to be joined by Chris and Katie. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Andy, I like your hat, mate.
On
That's
brand.
lovely. I like that.
What'd your t-shirt say? What'd your t-shirt say?
Oh, that's global as well. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Katie,
both wish.
Sorry.
In the post. It's in the post.
A global GG event, but we're all from the UK. So it's 9 o'clock over here. So hopefully we've got some people able to watch in the States, hopefully over in Australasia as well. And people watch it back. Hopefully you guys will get something out of this tonight. It's by no means, I'm not fully qualified in this. I'll take you guys through everything I've learned about transactional analysis and how you might apply it and really give you some ideas of where you might go on in the future. So Chris and Katie may pop on, pop off as we go through this. If anyone has any questions, chuck it in the chat. If I miss it, one of these guys will grab me. And Steph, you need a hat. You need a hat.
Yeah, I think that's going to have to be mandatory. Everyone's going to have to be, unless Andy, it's just me. Katie's going to have to be part of the crew as well, just the hat crew.
Yeah. People will know when we're going to do something.
I know nothing about this topic as well, so I'm hopefully going to learn something as well tonight.
Cool. So at any point, chime in with questions. If anyone has anything in the chat, please just throw it. And yeah, we'll just see where we go. So a pot of TA for two, obviously, because, we love our tea over in England. So it kind of made sense. So this is all about, before I start, this template is from Slides Mania. If you didn't see Paula with Short and Sweet last week, go and have a look. Like, her stuff is just amazing. It's free. And I wanted something which was going to be a bit more, pastel-y colored and nice. And it's like, well, why would I use anything other than Slides Mania? So go there and get some stuff. It's absolutely incredible. My digital planner for next year is one of hers as well. She does everything. So it's well worth a visit. It's well worth your time. Okay. A little bit about me. So I am a maths teacher. I work in the northwest of England. I'm in a private school at the moment, but I've worked, it'll be my 20th year in September. I've worked in England. I've worked in New Zealand. I've taught all boys or girls. I've taught in mixed schools. I've taught in the private sector and in the state sector. So I feel like my 19 years have been well spent across the boards, and kind of have fed into where I'm at now with what I'm trying to do with my career and with my job and stuff. And obviously we've had 4 or 5 months of just weird teaching going on. And I think this is why this could be really important, especially when we're going back to school. And I know the guys over in the States are going back soon. The guys over in Australasia are already there. They're going back to school because they're midway through their year. So hopefully this is going to be applicable to people. And like I said before, I'm a maths teacher. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a trained counselor. I have done some training, which I'll talk about in a sec. But I'm hoping that you guys will learn something from this and maybe want to do a bit more reading or maybe want to go and take the course, which I'll talk about, which I did a couple of years ago. So like I say, I kind of dabbled in the curriculum side of teaching, and that's not really for me. I felt a little bit more withdrawn from the personal relationships with the kids and stuff. It was more about, managing spreadsheets, which I obviously love because I'm a maths teacher. But it wasn't for me. And I got into head of year work and pastoral work. And that is really when, I felt like that's what I want to do. I can make these connections with these kids. I can make these connections with people. We can work together as a team. So I was a head of year in New Zealand. I was a head of year, joint head of sixth form over here. And then I've previously been a head of year again here in my last job for the last 3 years. And it was during that job really that I kind of went on to this counseling stuff. I worked with our Senko, was absolutely amazing, Mel Plant, and she is inspirational in everything that she does in terms of getting to know the kids. And when I was a head of year, she said, you should do some counseling training. So I thought, okay, we'll do that. The school paid for me to do it. So I did my level 2 and my level 3 counseling training. And that really gets you thinking about yourself. and about how those relationships work with the people. And then I wanted to know a bit more. And she's actually a trained transactional analysis therapist. So she pushed me in that direction as well and said, I think you really enjoy it. And honestly, the course that I took, the TA 101, which again, I'll come back to later on. I did it in Manchester at the Institute of Psychotherapy. And it's honestly mind blowing. Like the stuff you learn about relationships between you and your partner, you and your kids, you and people you meet in the street, whatever it might be, it's a proper eye-opening thing. Really, really is properly eye-opening. So for anyone watching, I want you to think about this for a second. So this is all about you. I'm going to give you a minute or so to think about this, and then I want you to hold on to this for the presentation. I want you to think about a relationship that you find frustrating. Now, that could be a kid you've taught in the past at school. It could be one of your friends, your family. It could be your partner. It could be the dog, whatever it might be. If Stuart's watching, Stuart will find one easily. But have a think about it. And you're trying to think about the one where you kind of go, oh, God, why did I say that again? Or why have I done that again? Or why are we doing the same argument again that we always seem to have? Just have a think about that for 15, 20 seconds or so. And I want you to keep that relationship in your mind as we go through this and keep thinking about what could change as we talk about it. So I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that.
Andy, I hope that isn't you tipping over tables in your classroom.
No, only when the golf shot goes wrong. Now, that's still, that little monster comes out every now and then.
I'm wearing his hat back front, not in school.
No, I tell you what, if I could go back to school and wear my cap backwards whilst teaching, I would be in heaven. The kids would come on to the live Google Meet lessons and I'd be there with my hat on backwards and they'd be like, Miss Lum, you're wearing a cap. Like, yeah.
He's the coolest man ever.
No, I was like, if I'm not at school, if I'm not at work in a suit, I'll be wearing a cap. So that's where you'll find me. Okay, hold on to that relationship. Keep thinking about that as we go through this presentation and see if things make sense, basically. Okay, so what do you want to get out of this? Well, my daughter's favorite film is Moana, so that's where the quote comes from. If you've not seen it, you've either not got children or you've just not got Disney Plus, one of the two things. I want you to try and think about things. I want you to question things, and I want you to explore what you might go further with this at the end of the whole session. Okay. What is transactional analysis? Now, if anyone saw Steph's colors session a couple of weeks ago, it kind of follows on quite nicely from that. So that was about, preparing yourself for if that person's an orange, like me and Chris are oranges. So we're a little bit gung-ho. We're a little bit, let's just go for it. Katie, what did you remember you were yesterday? It wasn't blue, was it?
Green. I was a greeny blue.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, me, I tell you.
Yeah, so you can start to plan for what that person's going to be like if you know what color they are. So this is it follows on quite nice from that, because this is really about knowing what's happening in an interpersonal conversation that's happening at that time, or the relationship which is happening. So it might work really nicely alongside Steph's session. If you've not seen it, go watch it. It was awesome. It's built around these three ideas. And the first one's the hardest one, especially as a teacher. It's built around the idea that people are okay. Now, what that means is that kid, when you go to the staff room and you've just had that kid in that bottom set and you get in there and everyone's like, oh, don't worry, they're just horrible. It's just what they're like. You have to get away from that. You have to get to the mindset that people are okay. And if something's going wrong with that person, potentially it's not their fault. They might have made bad decisions. Something might have happened to them. But deep down in their heart, they're okay. Second thing, everyone has the capacity to think. If you can't let people think and you can't let people make a decision, then this isn't going to work. All right. They have to be able to change what's going on in their life, in their perception at that moment. Otherwise, this isn't going to happen. And everybody can do that. Everybody can, even when they're in their, like my toddler, for example, my 3-year-old, when she is absolutely going mad at us and is crazy and doesn't want to go to bed, we can sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and she'll just come back down. And then she can think and then she can process. And she's 3 and she can do that. So everyone has the capacity to think. And the third one, again, which is a really hard one, is that people decide their own destiny. and those decisions that they make can be changed. People often think, oh, this is my life, this is what's happened, it's not my fault, it's all that. Change it. Everyone knows an amazing story of somebody who, a kid they've taught, they've got a rubbish family life, it's just not worked for them, but you know what, they've gone on, they've done well in the GCSEs, they've done well in their A levels, they've gone to university, and they've made something. It happens everywhere. Don't let people believe that they can't make that change. Okay, now this is Katie's favorite part when I was talking to her about it yesterday. Everything's about strokes. Now, I've put the transactions bit on there because it's less controversial in the world of teaching when we're going to talk about stroking each other. But if you think about what transactions...
I'm off.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll give you some nice strokes. You're my example, but don't worry. The whole idea, transactional analysis. So you're analyzing transactions between people. So when you pay for money, that's a transaction. You pay for something, with money. That's a transaction which takes place. It's the same idea. So if you've got something like this going on, where me and Chris see each other at work in the morning, and I'm like, morning, Chris, you've been working out, looking great. And he's like, hey, dude, thanks. I love the cap. You just have this really nice feeling from when you first see that person in the morning, and you give something positive and they give something positive back, and it just lifts you up. Even if you're walking past each other in a corridor and you just say morning to somebody and they go, morning, how are you? And you go, yeah, great, thank you, that's it. But then there's always those people that you walk past and you go, morning, and they just go, yeah, and then just slide off, and you're like, oh, okay. And it just leaves you with a horrible feeling. And it's one of these, it's that cold and prickly feeling. It's, Chris comes to me and says, morning, it's good weekends. And I'm just like, ugh. Now, there might be something that I'm holding on to from the weekend. There might be something that I want to talk about. But Chris takes that and goes, oh, Marty so-and-so, local word. If anyone doesn't know what Marty means, just ask us and some of us will be able to explain it. But it leaves you with a bit of a sour taste, a bit of a, oh, well, I'm not really feeling that. I'm not really thinking, what's going to happen with this relationship. I'm going to move on. And the next time that he sees me that day, he's probably going to think, oh, he's a bit cold with me this morning. Why would I bother? Why would I bother saying hello? Why am I going to go and sit with him when somebody over there was really nice this morning in the staff room, for example?
So, right? This isn't our relationship.
Well, we've only known each other on Twitter really for a while, but, we'll get there. We'll get there. When you move up north.
Would be cold and prickly.
Yeah. So the idea is that positive strokes, positive transactions between people, they make us feel okay about ourselves. They make us smile. They make us get that warm feeling. Whereas the negative strokes, they invite us to feel not okay about ourselves, even though it's probably nothing to do with us. When you don't get something back, you get a negativity. And it's something that you have to recognize and appreciate as happening to help you kind of through all these different things. Now, when you get a series of strokes between two people, you get what is called, you'll love this, Katie, a stroking pattern. And that pattern can be good. That pattern can be bad. Now, sometimes these certain patterns just don't work. So again, think back to that relationship, which I asked you to think about before, whether that's with a student that you've taught before. And that's always one I try and go back to keep myself grounded in what this is all about. You end up just having the same argument with the student because they've not done their work again, or they're messing around in class or whatever it might be. And it's just not working. And you might try to be nice in the morning, but as soon as they do something wrong, you just switch, you're cold to them. All of a sudden the relationship breaks down. And this is the key thing. This is the key idea of what this is all about. So these strokes, you've got the warm and fuzzy, you've got the cold and pricklies. The bottom bit here is what I want you to think about. Just imagine being, a teenager. You're turning up to school in the morning, and your form teacher, the person you look up to, someone you see every single day, they're your first kind of parental call at school. They just give you a cold and prickly. They've had a bad weekend. They've not slept, whatever it might be. And they just give it straight to that kid. And that kid's gone, oh, I've been looking forward to saying hello this morning on the trip to school. And I had this thing I wanted to show you from homework that I did. But you've just given me that. The kid's gone. You could lose them for the whole day. Potentially, you could lose them for longer. So try and think, really carefully about all the people you interact with all the time. This is not just at school, about how those interactions happen, how those strokes are happening. Okay. The other side of this then, so you've got your strokes and your transactions. The other side are the ego states. Now, if anyone's done anything to do with Freud before, he had his ego states, and this transactional analysis is loosely based on Freud stuff anyway. The creator was Eric Berne, and he said that an ego state is this: it's a system of feelings accompanied by a related set of behavior patterns. So you get this feeling which happens, whether it's a cold and prickle and it puts you off and it just gets you in there somewhere, and then all of a sudden you start behaving in a certain way with that person, with the scenario, whatever it might be. And it has this knock-on effect. So the further you go into thinking of counseling things or CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, that kind of stuff, that kind of counseling is all about this idea, getting into better patterns of behavior based on what's happening around you. So we have 3 ego states, and everyone has these. It doesn't matter if you're an 8-year-old, you have a parent, an adult, and a child. If you're a 41-year-old, you have a parent, an adult, and a child mode. You have this ego state which you can go into. And these 3 things are formed over years and years and years. I want you to think about yourself here and think about your students at school, and imagine if you can picture people behaving in these ways. So parent mode, parent ego mode, these are taught behaviors that you've learned from parents or parental figures. So that could be teachers that you know, kids see teachers as their parents at school, if you like. So they're learning from what those people do. Parents tend to fall into 2 different styles. So you have either the critical, the controlling parent, and that's the one who is authoritative, they're controlling, you know, do this, do that. They create order and they create compliance. It's not always a bad thing, obviously, because sometimes that's what we need. The other side of it you can fall into is a nurturing parent who is compassionate and caring, wants to organize, create safety, and just be really understanding. And sometimes maybe that's a great thing to fall into. So any of you that are parents, you'll recognize this straight away when your children at home are doing something. If they fall over, we pick them up, we cuddle them. We're being nurturing, we're being compassionate towards them. If they've got a glass and are about to throw it at their brother, we go into a controlling parent, you know, and that's naturally what happens. The adult state is all about in response to what's happening right now. And it's the logical person. It's the rational person. It's the one that analyzes what's happening, can reflect on the situation, the conversation that's going on, can take a step back and just pause and go, right, this is what's happening. This is what I'm recognizing. This is what we need to do to go forward. Then the third one is the child. Now, the child ego state can kind of go into 3 different ones. You can be an adapted child. And if you think of your students at school, start picturing them. They're the compliant one, the passive one, the one that maybe just sits and gets on with work, isn't going to tear up any trees in terms of getting merits or credits or anything like that if you give them out at school. But they're just going to be doing their stuff. They're not going to get in trouble. You could have your free child who is a bit more emotive. You know, they're probably, I'd imagine, a bit more like me and you were, Chris. You know, you're just a bit, let's go. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do it right now. Let's go. Let's do a StreamYard event. You know, we've never done this before. Let's just go. Finds new ways to bring the fun with you and your gifts for today, Chris. Definitely. And Darren, I've just seen in the chat as well. Brilliant. All right. Then you've got your rebellious child. You've got the one who is defiant, the one who's insecure, the one who plays to the crowd a little bit. You will recognize your students in these 3 things. Now, these are behaviors, thoughts, and feelings that you replay from childhood, from when you were a kid, and things that happened to you and ways that you were, and everyone can go back into it. I can certainly, you know, when I've not recognized the fact that the house needs cleaning, and my wife says, "Can you clean the house?" I can see myself going, "Why have I got to clean the house?" You know, but obviously I'm an adult and I need to make myself recognize these things that are happening. And these things happen in all of your relationships. So when you see, or when you feel yourself slipping into a child mode, start thinking about, well, do I need to be in this child mode? Do I need to be the rebellious child who's going to kick off about something that I'm being asked to do? Or do I need to just go gung-ho down the street on a scooter because somebody said it would look like fun? You know, what are we modeling if we're going to do these things? I mean, probably yes to the scooter thing. But keep it in the back of your mind. Here's Katie on the dance floor. So the ego states, the strokes and the transactions, they all build into relationships. Sometimes you will find yourself doing the same dance every single time when you're talking to a certain student, when you're talking to a certain member of staff. If you've got a head of department, I'm lucky I've got a great head of department. If you have a head of department who's very controlling, you find yourself slipping into a certain way and probably just saying yes. And yeah, I'll do that, no problem. Whereas you don't necessarily get the conversation around a table, which is who would like to do this. It's sometimes be more, Andy, we do this. Yep, yeah, I'll do that. And you say yes to it. But that dance works, but it's the same one every single time. Or when you have the student in your bottom set who turns up and is chewing gum, and you've asked them 74,000 times to not chew gum when they're coming into lessons because they're not allowed to. And you have that same conversation and you feel yourself having the same conversation. You picture the same thing happening in about 15 minutes time. They're going to get a detention, etc., etc., etc. Same dance every single time. Have you got those rebellious children, the ones who know how to push your buttons and know how to get you into the state where the lesson might go out the window? And I'm sure any teacher has had that happen to them at some point. Have you got the adapted child who sits there quietly and gets on with it? Have you got the intelligent one who's really funny and is also really good and gets on with their work, makes everybody laugh, but toes the line in the right way? Those, and I can think of one boy I had this year who was exactly that. Really, really clever, really intelligent, really hardworking, but always wanting to make little quips. And he was really funny, but it worked really, really well for him, and it worked in that class. Think about those relationships that you've been thinking about this whole way through. Okay, some examples of what can happen in these relationships. So on the left-hand side, you've got the teacher who's got the three modes. They've got the parent, adult, and the child, and you've got the student on the right-hand side. Now, let's say the teacher goes into parent mode and takes on a certain role and asks the student to do something. Now, if that student is going to say, yep, that's cool, I'll get on with that, they send that transaction back, and this works beautifully. It works really nicely. The teacher is asking the child to do something, and the child is saying yes. Teacher's happy, student's happy, parents are happy, the school's happy. That just works. Now, this is fine. We don't always need to be adults and in adult mode all the time. We can be parents as teachers. And in fact, students expect us to be parents and to do it. And if you are being that nurturing parent and you're trying to help them with their maths, for me, and they're appreciating that, things are going to work out nicely. However, sometimes these things go wrong, and sometimes you get cross transactions, which I'll go on to on the next slide. Now, one of the things I was thinking about with this pandemic, what you've got at the moment is a lot of students who are being forced to be adult in how they're doing their education because they're not being spoon-fed anymore. And if they want to do well, they're having to access stuff online. We're lucky in our school, we have, one-to-one devices. So I was able to go on and do a Google Meet. If I've got 25 kids in my year 7, I was getting 23, 24 kids would turn up to every single lesson. But that's not happened everywhere. Talking to friends in various schools around the country, around the world, that's not happening. And they're relying on these students accessing their own work, teaching themselves, watching some videos that might have been shared with them. If you can't think about what's happening in the here and now, in that adult mode, you can't access that. You can't be a rebellious child thinking, oh, I'll just go onto YouTube now and I'll search for some help with that. Or I'll go onto Hegarty Maths and I'll do some practice. Or I'll go on Dr. Frost and I'll do this. You can't do that if you're being a rebellious child. If you're being a controlling parent, you might be going back to the teacher as the student and saying, well, you tell me what to do. You're the teacher, you tell me what to do. And all of a sudden, you've become a parent in that conversation. If the teacher goes, okay, yeah, so sorry, fair enough. Here you go. This is what I need you to do. The teacher's taken on that kind of passive child and has gone, yep, that's fine. You can do that. Doesn't happen very often. Teachers find it really, really difficult to not be the teacher, not be the parent in that relationship. And then you get a cross transaction, and that's when your relationship can fail. Something like this. Imagine a student asking a question in adult mode, really, really sensible question related to what they're doing, or maybe even not related to what they're doing. But the teacher doesn't want to be an adult with that student. They want to maintain themselves as the parent. I am in charge here. You're going to do what I tell you to do. So they fire something back at the student as a parent, all of a sudden you have this cross. So whereas on the previous slide, you've got the teacher saying something to the student and the student responding as a child, that works, that's fine. In this case here, you have a cross transaction. Now, cross transactions are when the relationship's going to break down. That is when that conversation is just going to stop working, because people aren't in their kind of congruent roles, if you like. They're not responding in the way that you're expecting them to respond. And that can come from a student to a teacher and how the teacher responds back. One great idea of this, just imagine that clique of girls or boys in your school. You've got 4 or 5 of them, you see them walking around. There'll be a leader, 100%. There will be the one that those kids look up to. And that student will be the controlling parent, and the rest of them are the compliant children in that relationship, in that little group. All of a sudden, one of those children's like, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do anymore. I want to be the controlling parent. I want to be telling other people what's cool and what to do and what to wear. So they challenge it. So they're receiving a controlling parent transaction from somebody, and they're going, no, I'm not going to be a child here. I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. And that's when you get the fights. That's when you get the fallings out. And that's why as a head of year, you get people coming in saying, no, they've done this, which is why I found this stuff so powerful as a head of year, to just sit them down and say, right, and explain it and literally draw out on the floor, PAC, get them to think about what was happening in that relationship, what mode were they in, and why is it not working, and get the kids to see how it breaks down. Really, 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 really amazing once you see this. Okay, so what can we do as we start to return to school? So again, like I said at the start, this is just to whet your appetite really of what transactional analysis is. I want you to think about these things. So just be mindful all the time of all of the strokes or transactions that you're giving to people and that you're receiving as well. Because if you receive a negative one, it mightn't be anything to do with you. Maybe that person needs help. Maybe that person needs a coffee at break time and just to sit down, take their mind off something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's something simple like their iPad's just broken and they don't know what they're going to do. But maybe that conversation can happen. So when you receive that negative stroke, maybe you put yourself in adult mode, think about the here and now, and just go, right, what's happening with that person? They're not normally like that. So that's a bit out of order for them. Let's go and get a coffee. Let's have a sit down. How are you? What's happened this weekend? You know, what's been up? Might want to talk about it. They might not want to talk about it.
Great question from Gary here, Andy. I don't know if the comments are going mad, so I was just thinking of keeping on top. There's a question in the box if you can see it there.
Yeah. It does, but it takes time, Gary. You've got to be bringing them through the process. You can't just kind of throw it out there straight away and hope for the best. So normally, you know, as a head of year, you end up working one-on-one with the naughty kids, in inverted commas, if you like, a word I hate, but that's what you end up working with. They're the ones you see more often, and you end up doing counseling with them, and you end up talking them through and trying to get them to recognize. And it's that situation when you can really bring this in, when you know you're going to be talking to that student on a more regular basis, if you like, than certain other students. If it's a one-off, probably not going to mean anything. You can talk to them about it, absolutely. You can kind of mention it, but it needs to be drip-fed processed through with them. At my old school before I left, we were really considering working on a transaction analysis handbook or like online course or something for students to go through. And if they were finding themselves getting in trouble consistently with the same thing, well, let's go and work through this. Let's try and understand a little bit more about ourselves. I worked with one boy, a year 11 boy, who used to get into arguments with the same person over and over and over and over. And we worked on this for 3-4 months, probably every week. And it was really, really powerful just to see him turn up to my office and say, right, I've just had this argument. Now I recognize what was happening. And I was like, hallelujah. Like, wow, I don't need any more than that. Let's keep talking about it. I mean, he still had the argument, but he recognized that that was what was happening. And that's him on the steps to kind of hopefully figuring out how his brain works, how his mind works. And if he can spot those triggers, he can step back from it. He can stop being that rebellious child, which is what he turned into normally. If anyone asked him to do anything that he didn't want to do, straight into, I'm not doing that. There's the argument. And he would bring himself back to an adult state, which was amazing, absolutely amazing. So it revolves around, can you spot what state you're in? Can you spot what state the other person's in that relationship, in what's happening? Can you help that relationship by changing the ego state that you're in? and in a way which is going to encourage the other person to change their ego state. And I think that's the key thing. So just because you'll go, oh, you know, I can be an adult here because I recognize what's happening, I'm pretty good at this, and then you do it, they might not accept that, and that's fine. If they can't accept that, that's when you don't give up. You find a different way, as a teacher would, and that is that sit down, have that coffee, change the subject, whatever it might be. And that is you still doing it. That's you still being an adult, and that's bringing them back round to a place where you might be able to talk about what's gone wrong, or what's happening, or at least mend that moment, that little bit of relationship at that time. And the biggest thing possible in this is, can you spot when you're getting into that same dance with somebody? Can you recognize, I know where this is going, and I need to stop right now. I need to step back and I need to think about this. If you can do that, you're all over it. You're all over it. Like Steph said there, absolutely. This is about self-awareness, 100%. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard when you're, you know, period 5, you had a 5-period day. It's last lesson of the day. It's got that tough kid in it, and you've got to be on it with that kid. And you know you've got to be on it with that kid. Otherwise, they are just going to take the mick. And you're not on it because you're tired. And you find yourself just slipping into, right, get outside, staying out there. It's hard. It is really, really difficult.
We've all been there. We've all done that. We will make mistakes. We're constantly.
Absolutely. And in that situation there, the most important thing is the next time you see that kid. And if you've fallen out with that kid, and it might not be their fault, it might be their fault, whatever. The next time you see that student, you have to give them a warm and fuzzy. You have to show them that, you know what, that's gone. That was yesterday. That's fine. We've moved past it. We're going to talk about the next thing. You know, this is today's lesson. That was yesterday. Clean slate. Let's go. If you hold on to a grudge as a teacher, you're done for. There's nothing. There's nothing for you to do. Okay, so these are 3 things that I would recommend. Now, in the TA Today book is, you know, it's not the most thrilling read you're ever going to have in your life, but you can nip in and you can do a little bit. There are some, it's broken down really nicely into chapters. You just want to go and read a little bit at a time, do it. It's a great book. It's well worth it. As teachers, as educators, that's an interesting way of saying that word, as educators. The middle one, the educational transaction analysis, has a little bit more of theory and education with it, which is great. The one on the right is the TA 101. Now, this is a worldwide course. I did it in Manchester, but you can do it online. It's normally 2 days worth of stuff. It was 2 full days when I did it over a weekend. And it's just what kind of put me onto it was this idea of, well, what I'm going to do with it. And then within the first session, I remember Bob Cook, who did it for me, he was just explaining these things. And it was me and my mum I was thinking of in this relationship. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what happens. I recognize that. And I was sold instantly. You know, that was in the first kind of 20 minutes of this introduction. And it was 2 days of the best professional development, I think, as a head of year, as somebody who wants to work with people, that I've ever had. So I can highly recommend it. Thanks, Steph. And that's it. So the slideshow is available there if you want it. Obviously, you can quite happily message me on Twitter. That's fine. Or yeah, there we go. Or ask questions in the comments now. Happy to answer anything. Or go away and think about it. You know, that's something like this, which could be completely different to anything you thought of before. You need to go away and think about, is that applicable? Would I be interested in seeing more? Go read some books, go do some courses. But think about going back to school. What's going to happen when you see those students who you've not seen for 5-6 months? How are they going to be? Can you recognize how they're reacting? Can you recognize in yourself how you're reacting, and go from there? But that's it. That's transaction analysis. Hopefully it's interesting enough for people and get something from it. Were there any other questions that you guys saw? Because I had my little cheat sheet covering that, so I don't know anything that's happened in the chat.
The chat's gone crazy. The people are just valuing everything that you've got to say. You need to do some more lives, apparently, so prepare yourself for that. They've genuinely said loads of ed tech stuff they've learned from, but this has been a breath of fresh air.
Just a break from having a break from ed tech stuff, I think.
Well, when me and Chris were talking about doing something when we kind of joined Global GEG, I was like, I don't want to do this session, but I was like, but it's got nothing to do with ed tech. So I messaged, I can't remember who, it was either Abid or Steph, I think, that I messaged and went, is that all right? I think it was Steph, and Steph was like, yeah, go for it. Like, it can be anything. At the end of the day, this is for teachers, right? It's for educators. It's for people. So it's highly relevant, I think, all the time. Don't blame me if you know, or relationships go wrong, but it's just something to get everyone to think about.
Takes time.
It does take time. It absolutely takes time.
This is like, Katie, you're gonna have to get yourself a cap. This is like team caps.
No, I need to join this one. I need to get a cap. I need a cap, guys.
Great session, Andy. Really, really good. Like I say, chat's gone crazy. People massively valuing what you've got to add and offer. And for a 37-minute stream, it's been amazing. I've learned so much. Good.
So yeah, hit me up if anyone's got any questions. Follow Chris on Twitter. He needs 2 more for 1,000. So if you're not following him, go follow him. Me and Kate got like 26 between us, so don't worry about us.
We'll add ours together, and then hopefully we'll catch up.
We'll still be well short.
I won't celebrate though, because Abid said if you get to 1,000, you celebrate, you lose 3 followers. So I'm gonna have to.
That's what Abid will just hack in and remove your followers just so you're not got too many. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your two's help, Chris and Katie, as well. And managing all that behind the scenes stuff and all the things that pop up. It's amazing what Global GEG's doing and what GEG UK is doing and all the other GEGs. I'm being really careful to say GEG and not GEG, because apparently people mishear these words. So yeah, go for it. Ask questions, send any questions into us, and enjoy all the other sessions that are coming up.
Feedback form, see if they can fill in the feedback form.
Yeah, fill in that feedback form, and we'll go from there. And hopefully we will see you again soon.
Subscribe to that channel.
Now you will get to enjoy Chris's lovely outro video.
Well, I do try.
Go.
Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.